You're not invited to the wedding. We all decided. That sentence shattered me more than I expected. It wasn't just the words, it was the way my mother said them. Cold. Final. Like I was nothing. Like I had never been a part of this. Family at all. Before we go further, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because what happens next, you won't believe. It was my younger sister Emily's wedding, my baby sister, the one I practically raised when our dad left. I held her hand during her first heartbreak, stayed up all night helping with her college essays, even worked 2 jobs so she wouldn't have to drop out. But now, as everyone in the living room stared at me like I was the intruder, I realized, this family never really saw me. Why? I asked, my voice cracking despite my best effort to stay composed. Mom looked away, but it was Uncle Rick who smirked and said, let's not pretend you belong in a place like that. It's a high-profile wedding, not some charity dinner. I froze. Did he really say that out loud? My cousins chuckled awkwardly, and my sister stood there, silent. Not a word in my defense. Not even a glance. Dad, sitting on the leather recliner he never let anyone else touch, added, look, Nora. You've always been different. We didn't want you to embarrass the family. Embarrass the family. I left the room quietly, holding back tears like a dam about to burst. But they didn't know, I wasn't the same Nora they used to mock. For the past 3 years, I'd been building something in silence. While they laughed, gossiped, and pitied me, I was creating an empire. They knew nothing about. They thought I was struggling just because I lived in a modest apartment and drove a basic car. But behind that quiet life was a company worth more than their combined mortgages, and they were about to find out in a way they'd never forget. The wedding invitation might have been denied, but they forgot one thing. I don't need to be invited to a place? I already own. 3 days after they uninvited me, I sat in my office, floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking downtown. My assistant, Rachel, walked in holding a stack of contracts. They finalized the booking for the Lakeshore estate under a proxy account. You sure you want to go through with this? I smiled, slowly sipping my coffee. Positive. Let the show begin. Lakeshore estate wasn't just some random venue. It was a luxurious, members-only space for elite clients. A place the family never could have dreamed of affording, except they didn't know it had quietly changed ownership last year. I bought it. In full. Using a shell company, they were using my venue, under a fake coordinator, booked by a wedding planner I now had on payroll. 2 nights before the wedding, my cousin Stephanie posted a photo captioned, "Only the elite deserve to be here. Can't let just anyone show up and ruin the vibe." The comments were full of snide inside jokes. I didn't need to read between the lines, they were about me. They thought I'd disappear, feel ashamed, go sulk somewhere in the shadows. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I pulled out my phone and messaged Rachel, pull the trigger. Activate Clause 17. Clause 17 in their venue contract stated, if the true owner or primary shareholder disapproves of any individual attending, the contract may be revoked without refund. The next morning, panic broke loose, calls started flooding Rachel's desk. The planner texted me 10 times. Stephanie even DM'd me, hey, something's wrong with the venue. They're saying it's suddenly unavailable. WTF is happening? I replied with one sentence, ask Mom. The silence after that was louder than anything. They started connecting the dots. That afternoon, Mom showed up at my apartment. I watched her on the security cam before I buzzed her in. She walked in with a fake smile and said, honey, we didn't mean to hurt you. You know how families are. I leaned back on my couch, looking straight into her eyes. You told me I didn't belong. Remember? She blinked, caught. We were emotional. It was poor timing. I stood up and walked over to the window, pulling the curtain aside. You booked my property. You disrespected me. And now you want a favor? Her eyes widened. Wait, your property? I turned, arms folded. Not just the venue. The entire chain. I own every Lakeshore estate in the state. And your wedding? Is cancelled. Unless, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Unless what? She whispered. I smiled. Unless Emily herself comes here and asks me, with respect. I don't know what hurt more, being uninvited, or watching her stand in front of me and still refuse to believe in me. You're nothing, Nora, she repeated, almost like she needed it to be true. Just a bitter little girl with a fragile ego. You think you can ruin your sister's wedding? With some fantasy? I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my tablet, tapped a few times, and rotated the screen toward her. A list of business assets popped up: owner, Nora Whitman Holding Company, NW Group LLC, Property 5, Lakeshore Estate. Grandview Property 6, Lakeshore Estate, Harborfront. Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked small. Like the tower she had always stood on crumbled beneath her in seconds. I've spent the last 6 years building everything from the ground up, I said, my voice calm but sharp. While you laughed behind my back, I worked 2 jobs, coded my first booking software at night, flipped the profits into real estate, and built a quiet empire. I've been quiet for too long. She sat down slowly, almost collapsing into the chair. Why didn't you ever tell us? Tell you? I laughed bitterly. You never listened. You didn't even ask how I was after Dad kicked me out. All you cared about was image, appearances. And now, because I didn't show off, you all assumed I failed. That night, I received a message from Emily. Emily, Nora? Please. I didn't know. I didn't want this. I never agreed to uninvite you. That was Mom and Uncle Rick. I'm sorry. Me, you didn't speak up either. Emily, you're right. I was scared. But I don't want to get married without you. Please meet me. Something in me softened. I agreed that we met at a quiet cafe the next morning. She hugged me like she hadn't seen me in years. Tears in her eyes. I messed up, she said. You've always protected me. And when I had the chance to protect you, I froze. I looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't the villain. She was just weak. A people pleaser. And in our family, weakness gets manipulated fast. I'll give you the venue, I finally said. But under one condition. She looked up, hopeful. Anything. You walk down that aisle, I said, and you say something real. Not about image. Not about family perfection. But about truth. The wedding day arrived, crystal blue sky, manicured gardens, champagne flowing, and guests buzzing around like they were part of a royal affair. Nobody knew that the woman they had all ridiculed, excluded, and whispered about behind closed doors owned the ground they were standing on. I stood in the observation suite above the main hall, behind mirrored glass, watching it all unfold. My staff was in position. The planner, on my payroll, was instructed to follow my cues, not the family's. Every camera angle, every microphone was rigged. And I was ready. Downstairs, Emily looked stunning. Nervous, but composed. I saw her glance up at my suite once before the ceremony began. I nodded. It was time. The ceremony started like any other. Romantic music, forced smiles, and Mom grinning like she'd orchestrated the entire day with perfection. Uncle Rick, bloated with pride, toasted guests in the front row like he was the king of the castle. Then Emily stepped to the mic for her vows, but instead of turning to her fiancé, she turned to the audience. I need to say something, she began, her voice shaky. Today isn't just about me and Nathan. It's about the people we choose to keep close, and the people we wrongly push away. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd. Mom frowned. Uncle Rick straightened in his seat. Emily continued, a few weeks ago, I let others decide who mattered. I let my silence hurt someone who spent her entire life protecting me. My sister, Nora. Gasps. Heads turned. She was excluded. Mocked. Dismissed. But none of you knew, she's the reason this wedding could even happen. Uncle Rick barked. What is she talking about? This isn't the place. Emily raised her hand to silence him. You wanted to control this wedding, Uncle Rick. Just like you've tried to control everything. But here's the truth, this venue, the flowers, the media coverage, even the catering staff you've been barking orders at? All of it is Nora's. She owns this entire estate chain. Silence fell like thunder. And today, I'm not standing here because of a picture-perfect family. I'm standing here because of a sister who built her own empire, while we pretended she was a failure. Mom's jaw dropped. Aunt Karen covered her mouth. Uncle Rick turned beet red. I stepped out of the glass suite and began walking toward the hall. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. People started clapping slowly, then louder. I didn't say a word. Just walked up to Emily, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "You did good." All eyes turned to me. But my gaze was fixed on Uncle Rick, the self-appointed patriarch, the bully who thrived on intimidation, who laughed when I ate cereal for dinner in my studio apartment years ago, who told everyone I'd never make it without a man. I walked toward him slowly, heels echoing on the marble floor, calm like a storm right before it hits. You said I don't know who I'm messing with, I said, voice steady. But maybe you forgot, I watched you for years. The bribes. The fake invoices. The money you stole from Grandma's estate. I saw it all. I just waited, for today. His face went white. You're bluffing. I reached into my purse and pulled out a brown envelope. I own the venue, Rick. And I also own the paper trail. Offshore transfers. Tax records. Fraudulent payouts under Emily's wedding budget. You've been laundering money through this family for years. Gasps rippled through the hall. My mother clutched the back of her chair. The guests looked around uncomfortably, unsure if this was a wedding or a courtroom drama. You don't have proof, Rick hissed. I handed the envelope to the estate's security team standing nearby. Actually, I do. And it's already been submitted to the IRS and the local DA's office. Two suited officers stepped out from the back. Mr. Richard Caldwell, one of them asked. We need to have a word with you. As they walked him out in front of everyone, camera flashes going off, guests recording in disbelief, I finally looked over at my mother. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the daughter she'd once called a disappointment. Nora, she whispered, why would you do this to your own family? I shook my head. You did this. When you chose status over love. When you let Rick control everything. When you told me I didn't belong. I just gave you what you asked for, the truth. Emily reached out and took my hand, tears in her eyes. You saved my wedding, and our future. I looked around at the stunned crowd and smiled, not with spite, but with power. I had arrived. Not as the invisible sister. Not as the joke of the family. But as the woman who built everything they thought I never could. The rest of the night was surreal. Guests came up, apologizing. Some asked for business cards. Reporters started circling. But I didn't care about the attention. I just watched my sister dance, happy and free, knowing the cycle of silence and manipulation had finally ended, and as the fireworks lit up the sky over the estate I now proudly owned, I thought, sometimes, the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you never would.